So many people want to learn a foreign language, but most of them fail at it. Why is that? In today's video, we're going to talk about the 11 most common reasons why people fail at learning a language, so that we can make sure that you're not one of them. But before we start, I want to thank italki for sponsoring this video. For those who don't know, italki is a platform where you can find many native teachers of various different languages. So you can go there to learn pretty much any language you want from a native speaker. And what's more, their prices are very reasonable. If you're interested, click on the link in the description where you'll also get a discount. So, why do so many people fail at learning a foreign language? The number one reason is they simply are not passionate about the language that they're learning, or they don't have a strong reason why they're learning the language. A lot of the time, this applies to students who have no interest really in the language, but they feel like they're being forced to learn it. Ideally, you want your reason why to fill you with joy, to really give you positive feelings, because having positive feelings will greatly affect your motivation, and ultimately it is your motivation that leads you to success. So if you can, try to fall in love with the culture, fall in love with the people, become emotionally connected with the language and everything connected to it. Remember that passion and motivation is what's going to carry you through the hard times when you're learning difficult grammar points or when you're trying to remember a lot of vocabulary. Number 2, they don't set realistic goals. Now, I have to be honest here, when I was doing a bit of research for this video, I came across a website, I won't mention which one, that claimed you could learn the language in question within hours, not years. Well, I'm sorry, but if you actually can learn any language within hours, please let me know your method, because as far as I know, that is literally impossible. It takes at best months, but realistically it does take a few years, because most people can't just spend all day learning the language that that they want to learn. They have a life, they have other commitments, and at least as regards English and French, it takes about 1100 hours of study to actually become fluent in it. So people that claim that you can fit 1100 hours within 3 months, I don't know, but personally, I don't think that's possible. So make sure you set realistic goals. For example, if you're a beginner at A1 level, you could say, I want to reach A2 within 3 months. Or you could say, I want to learn this, this, and this month, and then next month I'll learn this, this, and this. But don't set yourself a goal of becoming fluent within 3 months, because it's unlikely to happen. And that will just demotivate you, and then you'll end up quitting anyway. The third reason why a lot of people fail at learning a language is because they simply don't have enough time. Now, as we were saying, it takes about 1,000 to 1,200 hours to become fluent in most languages, or at least in French and English. And a lot of people don't realize that learning a language requires a commitment to actually spend a bit of time every day doing it. So if you're learning a foreign language, you need to make sure that you have at least 30 minutes to an hour every single day that you can devote to language learning. If you don't have a bare minimum of 30 minutes, you're going to find it very difficult to reach fluency. Obviously, if you're learning the language because you just want to be able to say a few phrases when you go on holiday, then you're not going to need that much time, or as much time, I should say, to reach your goal. But if your goal is fluency, then you definitely need at least 30 minutes to an hour every single day. The fourth reason is a lot of people procrastinate, and that goes for anything, not just language learning. And yes, I'm guilty of that as well sometimes, a lot of the time. But that's true, if you procrastinate a lot, then you are not going to reach your goal as fast. and then you might even lose motivation because it's taking so long. As for language learning, a lot of people, they spend so long researching the best method, the best course, the best teacher, that they actually forget that while they're doing that for months on end, they're not actually learning anything. So what you want to do is you want to find a course or a teacher that keeps you feeling good, because if you're feeling good, you're going to be motivated, and therefore you're much more likely to put in the work and actually reach your goal. So one course, not two, not three, not four, one at a time, and actually start learning. Remember that if you choose to go with a teacher as well, what's good is that you're going to feel much more accountable, therefore less likely to procrastinate and more likely to actually do what they told you to do and therefore reach your goal as well. So if you want to find a teacher, remember to click on the link below and check italki out. You'll find loads of native teachers there. And hopefully they'll manage to keep you from procrastinating. The fifth reason people fail at learning a language is that they're simply not consistent. It's much better to put in 30 minutes of work every single day, so 5 to 7 days a week, depending on whether you count the weekend as days to study. But 30 minutes at least 5 days a week is much better than doing, say, 2.5 hours on a Monday and then nothing for a week and then start again the next week. Because if you do it every day, repetition is always key. It helps things stick in your mind. So consistency is very important. Do a bit every day rather than big chunks randomly throughout the month. Motivation and consistency are definitely key to success. The sixth reason why people fail at learning languages is that they find it hard or boring. And the main reason for that is when you're learning in a school environment, there is so much emphasis put on grammar. And grammar can sometimes be boring. Well, actually, it nearly always is boring. But it can also make the language sound like it's a lot harder than it is. And grammar has its place, don't get me wrong. But you need to view it as a tool that is going to enable you to learn the language faster. But if you don't understand a grammar point, don't try to understand it and remember everything. And anyway, when you're speaking, if you want to speak fluently, you can't be thinking about, oh, when am I supposed to use this tense again or whatever, those things actually come much easier when you expose yourself to the language enough that it just comes naturally. You don't have time to remember grammar rules when you're in the middle of a conversation. So yes, use it if you can to speed up your language learning, but don't get bogged down if you don't understand the rule. Just move on. The seventh reason why a lot of people fail at learning a language is because they lack direction. This often happens when people are trying to learn on their own, for example on YouTube or on Google, and they just don't have a structure. They don't really know what they don't know, so they don't know what they need to learn next. So it's important to follow a curriculum, whether it is within a course or whether it is learning with a teacher. Don't just go at it haphazardly, not really knowing what you're doing, not really knowing what you need to learn next, but just guessing. Of course, that's not to say that you can't learn on your own, but you need to make sure that even if you're learning on your own, even if you don't have a teacher, that you're following a curriculum. The eighth reason people fail at learning a language is that they don't practice enough outside lessons. You need to put what you're learning into practice in order for it to stick in your mind. So ideally, you want to befriend a native speaker who is going to be patient enough and willing to answer your questions and correct you when you ask. But failing that, you can still practice on your own by talking to yourself in the language you're learning as much as possible, or at least thinking in that language as often as you can. You can watch movies in that language. Netflix is a very good one, by the way, because if you get Netflix, you can pretty much watch anything you like and just click on the button at the bottom and change the spoken language, or even change the subtitles. So that is brilliant. That is something I do a lot with Spanish. So if you didn't know you can change the language on Netflix, which I didn't a few months ago, even though I've had Netflix for years, then do that. That should help you as well. And keep it fun, rather than just focusing on grammar. We don't want to do that. Keep it fun, watch movies, talk to people, make plenty of mistakes, who cares? And yeah, just have fun. The 9th reason, and I have a little anecdote about this one, is that they don't learn from a native speaker. Now, obviously, you can also learn from somebody who shares your native language, but has learned your target language as a second language in the way that you're learning it. But it's definitely important, if you can, to seek a native speaker. And the main reason for that is pronunciation. Because if you are pronouncing words with a very, very strong accent, then chances are when you go to the country that speaks your target language, they are less likely to understand you, and you're less likely to understand them because you're not used to hearing the actual accent that the language should be, spoken in. I hope that makes sense. So here's a little anecdote. When I was learning English at school, I was very good and I understood, what was going on in the classroom because I really loved, that was my favorite subject. And when I went in for my exam, I still remember the teacher, that was the examiner really, she asked me about the cloth of the people that were in a particular picture, and she told me what can you tell me about the cloth? But she pronounced it kind of cloth, and I was like, what? I've never heard that word before, what are you on about? So I asked her, what's cloth? And then she pronounced it again and she said clothes, and I was like, oh, clothes, obviously I know that word, but why did you pronounce it like cloth and not clothes like it should actually have been pronounced? So that just goes to show that non-native teachers can also make pronunciation mistakes that then you are very likely to make yourself as well. And aside from that, there is also the added issue that they're very likely speaking with a very strong accent. So they're teaching you the language through their very strong accent, and therefore you're not really hearing the language the way it is technically spoken by native speakers. I'm still annoyed at the fact that she marked me down when I know she was the one who made the mistake, not me. But hey, there we go, I guess. The 10th reason people fail at learning a language is they don't believe they can do it. There is this myth going around on the internet and pretty much everywhere that you can't become fluent if you start learning a language after the age of 12. Well, that is nonsense. I started learning English, I was 12 and a half. And I would think I'm pretty fluent. I think that it's just a numbers game. You need to study the language for 1,000 to 1,200 hours in total, and then you become fluent. Most people give up before they reach that. That's the only reason they're not becoming fluent in the language. Whether you're 8 or 80, as long as you are motivated, as long as you're practicing, as long as you're actually taking actions and putting in the hours, you will get there. Don't let people tell you otherwise. Don't let articles about the fact that you can't learn if you're 13, 14 or whatever. If you are not a child, that's it. That's you done. Don't let that affect you. That is bullshit. Just put in the time and you'll get there. The only thing you need is motivation, time and consistency. And obviously a course or a teacher that, keeps you progressing. But that's it. Who cares about your age? The 11th reason why a lot of people fail at learning languages is because they are scared of making mistakes. Now, you should never feel embarrassed about making mistakes. They're not something to be feared. They're simply something to learn from. You need to use your mistakes as a learning opportunity. When you make a mistake, view it as a pointer of what you need to learn next. Don't become embarrassed by it. Quite the opposite. In my opinion, and I always say that on my social media, if you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. The only way you wouldn't make any mistakes at all is well, actually, scratch that. I was going to say is if you're a native speaker, but native speakers make mistakes themselves all the time. Like personally, my native language is French, as you may know if you have come to my channel before, and I don't know a single person who doesn't make mistakes while speaking it. Whether they are pronunciation mistakes, whether they're grammar mistakes, mistakes are a big one. Like everyone makes mistakes, so don't be embarrassed by it. What's more, being scared of making mistakes is going to hold you back because you're much more likely when you're speaking to somebody to stick to phrases and sentences that you've used many times before, that you're confident with, rather than take a few risks and actually practice something that's a bit more advanced. Because remember, practice makes perfect. So you really want to practice structures and sentences that you're not confident with. Because also then the person you're speaking to, they might actually correct you, and then you will know how to say what you wanted to say in a maybe more advanced way, and then you remember it for next time. So please, 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 if you're learning a language, make plenty of mistakes, because that is how you're going to learn. So if you're looking for a native teacher online that will tailor lessons to your specific needs, click on the italki link below, and you'll also get free credits when you register and pay for your first lesson from the company. Let me know in the comments below whether you're guilty of any of these 11 reasons why people fail at learning a language. I'd love to hear from you. And if French is one of the languages that you're learning and you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do. I'd be happy to have you join us. À la prochaine. Bye.